guys, how's it going? I have winter holidays currently and I'm working on several open source projects, and I saw that most of them still are using Java 7 or 8, so I helped them moving on to Java 8, and it was highly appreciated, which is great, and it was big fun to contribute. But then I wanted to go on and move to Java 9 and 10 and 11 and past that, because there are great features in that, and I was stopped with several arguments. And I thought, what is the reason that people actually stick with Java 8 and fear to go to Java 9 and 11? So certainly JPMS is a topic, but you don't have to use JPMS. You can just ignore them and move to Java 11 or 12 or 15 or whatever you want. So I thought it might be a good idea if I just show you a bit of my source code, which is a tutorial I'm using recently, and I rewrote that to use Java 15, and I thought maybe if I rework it back into Java 8, I can convince you that the modern code is much better, and that there is no reason anymore to stick with Java 8 or older. So let's dive into code now. So let's look into some real code I'm using for my JAX-RS tutorials. Don't be scared of the JAX-RS part, just concentrate on the Java part. So what we have here is a main method, and the program is using netty to create an HTTP server, and the HTTP server has a JAX-RS engine to provide some HTML. When there is an HTTP GET, it returns some HTML, which you find here. And it's using a variable for some parameters. For example, for the debugger level, I want to translate it from a level to string. So this is not very complicated, no rocket science. And now let's see what happens if I try to rework it to run on Java 8 again. So the first thing I have to do is get rid of the var keyword. So I have to know the actual type. So I have a great IDE, and the IDE knows the type, which is nice. It tells me it's a JavaNet URI. Okay, let's do that. I need a URI. And next one is a resource config, and the next one is a channel. I know all of that because I have written that code before, so I need the imports now. Certainly my IDE can do that, I know that, but let me just write it by hand this time. So you see what happens. I'm creating new lines. We have this one. We have the netty provided. We need a channel. I need IO netty channel. Okay, so now we have the imports, and what you see is that we have more lines than before. Yes, I want to store it. So we have 22 code lines, and we have these types, and what you can see is that these types are rather wide, so it's a bit harder to read. I know you're used to this, so it's not a real problem, but from my point of view, I'm so used to getting rid of it that I really love the style where you don't see the type, because I actually don't care for the type. The IDE knows the type, the IDE does it right, so why should I bother with it at all, really? I just think this clutters your code, and I actually don't like that I have more lines here, because as I said, I don't care for the type. What is good with having it here? So maybe this will not convince you completely, but at least one thing you can get from here is when you're using var, you not only make your lines shorter, you also make your rows fewer, because you don't need the imports. And in some of my real world projects, I have hundreds of lines of imports, and it's really much less when you start using the var keyword, and then your imports will be readable again. So this is where we started, and as you can see, it's 19 lines, and the Java 8 versions is 22 lines. So this is just hello world, right? So you're sparing a lot. I would say approximately the code is only 75% when you're using the var keyword, certainly depending on how many imports you have. But it's also considerably easier to read once you really get used to ignoring the type, because ignoring the type does not mean it's typeless. The IDE and the compiler still know the type. It's just hiding it from you because it makes no sense to read it. Another benefit when you're going with modern Java is that you can use, for example, the switch expression. So I have another example here from my tutorial, and this one is using a switch expression. So besides the var keyword, which is rather easy to fix, let's fix that switch expression, and this will get tricky. So start trying it. If I don't have a switch expression, I would go with normal cases. So the cases are the same like this one, and I will need a switch keyword here, and I certainly do the same switch. So it should be do exactly the same. Oh, sorry. And we need the brackets. So okay, let's copy the cases. Oh, it's a bit of hacking, but it should not be too complex. So I don't have that lambda pipe here. I have to go with colons, and I have to write return. Oh no, I can't write return because I want to use the output here as a variable. So in modern Java I could use yield, but we don't want to use modern Java. What am I do here? So I could write it in a method and call that method. Yeah, I could do that, but this would make the code even worse, but maybe it's worth it. So let's try. I remove it here. Let's write a method for it. So there's a private static method, and it returns a string, and I need a name for it. So guessing names is always something I have to spend lots of time to make it really good. So what could it be? For example, debug level as string. And well, the debug level goes here, but I didn't actually remember the type. So what was the type? I have to look up here. In the expression, I don't need to know the type actually. Okay, it was written here. I'll give it a type. I need to name the parameters, or what is a good name for the parameter? Debug level. Okay, let's go with that, and then post it here. Yeah, that's really work. So we have to switch, and let's remove that. Debug level. Okay, now I can use return. That's really nice. And I have a default, which is always good. I have to close this one. Forgot parentheses. So now I have a method. The method should do exactly what the switch expression did. The debug level goes in. This is 1, this is 2, and this is the default, so we can't get rid of it here. So let's do that. Method debug level as string, and get rid of this one, and get rid of this and of that. So that's mostly it. So we end up with a code which is Java 8 compatible, and it's, well, we could discuss whether the readability is better or not. At least I cannot see how the conversion works here. I actually have to look up the code, and if this is long code, then I have to scroll, which is always a bad thing because I forget where I came from. So where did it came from? I have to go back. So I would say it's not better to read actually, but it depends on the case. I understand if people say I love this solution better because it has a clear name and I have separation of concerns, so this conversion is not really the concern I have above here. I understand all that arguments, so I don't say that modern Java is always better, but it's always something you should consider. Because in my really simple example, it was the easiest thing I could write. And we have 29 lines now. So let's go back to the original version and see how many lines it had. A bit faster. It had 24, so we spare 5 lines and 1 method, and actually, I think this is pretty well readable. It says, I have a message which contains hello world in, and then I want to switch around the property. And in case 1, I want to write simple debug or advanced debug or production and then mode. So I understand all the arguments, but I think for such really simple use cases, it would be too much to add another method. And if I try to write it inline, it gets real worse. I tried that before, so let's do that. If you really think this is worth, I will do that. But it won't make the code any better. So sorry, the same thing again. I write it here, and I need those, and I need those. Sorry. Not this one. And I have the cases, case 1. And I have the same problem as before. I need some kind of variable now, so let's do that. This is, for example, a string. Let's do the same name, debug level as string, and it's not initialized. And to guarantee that I always have something inside it, we should write final here, even if we didn't want to. But it's the sole guarantee that the compiler will notice if there is one missing. So we have here the debug level as string is simple debug. And that's not all. We need a break. And maybe we should do it a little more nice. So we have case 2, which is debug level as string is advanced debug. And we need a break again. And there's the default case. And the default case is debug level as string is production. And well, we can spare this break, but it's nice to have it here if we have it here and you have it here. I know that technically I don't need it here, but there are even IDEs that say, hey, why don't you have a break here? So, well, I don't think that this one really is better to read than this one. I really don't think so, but we can try if you think. So let's replace it. Sorry. String plus, and then move it. Move it down here. So this is the final version, and it has 35 lines. Really, guys, do you really think that this is better than having this inlined? So let's go back to compare it. Go back. So then this, just 24 lines. This doesn't convince you? Really? I am convinced, actually. But there's even more that I like in modern Java. And sometimes it's the small things, actually. In this code here, for example, I have to return a map. So this is a factory for a map that contains properties for JAX-RS. Don't need to bother with the JAX-RS details. So the map is always the same. So I'm doing Map.of, and here I have the key, the value, the next key, the next value. This is pretty nice. It's really great. I just love it. I waited for that for years, literally. And here I have a similar thing for a set. So what I did in the past always is that I wrote my own helper functions to do that. Yeah, I can do that, and I have a utility library that has lots of helper functions, but I don't need them anymore. Since Java 9, so since years, we can do this. This is great. Guys, just do it. So to convince you, let's convert it into Java 8, because you say you can do everything with Java 8. Sure you can. So this was not existing. I had to write collections singleton, which is pretty much the same actually. But then I have to change my imports again. So this is a drawback, because again I have more code lines, and more code lines needs more scrolling, and I hate scrolling actually. So next one, we have a map. Okay, I can create a map with collections. Sorry, singleton map. This is existing, I know that. Even if my IDE is not so convinced about it. But then I have the problem that this is not working. I only must give it a single entry because it's a singleton. So I could say, well, what's the problem? Just store the map and add it later. Okay, I can try that. Map put, sorry. Nice. Why not? And then a return. Looks nice. The compiler is happy. You just have 2 more lines. So what's the problem with that? Well, the problem is that it's not working, because a singleton map will throw an exception at runtime when you do a put on it. But you don't see this here. So you write code that is not real obvious to the reader. That's not a good thing. So let's write it in a way that is better, that won't throw an exception and still will work. Okay, so let's do a hash map. And we need a parameter, so we go with the diamond operator for short. But then I have to write another import. See, again we have the same problem, that the imports are getting longer and longer. So there is no constructor that accepts key and value, so I have to put this in the map on my own. And I have one more line. So this one is working, it's not throwing any hidden exceptions, and it has 23 lines of code. Well, you could say, okay, just a few lines more. That's right. But the longer your code is, the more additional code lines you get. So this is some factor you have to remember. And it's not just a few lines in a real-world application. Let's go back to the original code. Here it is, and it has 18 lines. So I would say it's worth sparing those lines. I would say it's much better to read. I love this one actually, the Map.of, and I will always go with that one. So you would say that's it, just for 3 hacks where you can spare some code lines, or where you have short code lines, or where you don't have to remember the class types, or where you don't have to look up them. Well, no, not for each single feature. First of all, it's not only these 3 features. There are lots of features. I just have picked 3 that are simple to explain in this short video, not to make it too long for hours. And there will be more features in future. I just picked 3 features that you can do with Java 15 here. You can also add, for example, the text blocks, which is also a nice feature. So there are more and more features that you miss when you stay with Java 8. And actually, I think if you look at the whole bunch of it, don't pick one feature and think that this single feature must prove that Java 11 is better than 8, for example. Take them all. Take all those features. Use Java 16 EA, for example, and write code with every feature you have new since Java 8. Look into all the APIs, all the keywords, all the compiler settings, all the GC settings. Use all of that. And then you will see in a real world application, when you use all that new keywords and APIs and all that your code is much easier to write, much easier to read, much easier to maintain. You do much less failures, and possibly it will run much faster. Even for legacy code, it makes sense to think about using a more modern compiler, because more modern compilers are faster and give you more concise error messages. So it's worth looking into that. Or for example, there might be an API that makes you getting rid of lots of code lines, and those code lines have potential failures. So think about that. Or maybe there's a new API that makes the code running faster, which is also worth it. It depends what you think what maintenance actual is about. It's not only about bugs and security, it's also about performance. So think about that. Using a new GC, for example, can speed up your code considerably. So what are the reasons why you don't at least try it out? So take some time, look into the new features, and at least learn about them. Learning is always a good thing, so at least know what you're missing by not migrating your code. And rewriting a piece of code is nothing bad, actually. I often rewrite old code to make it better, and it's much easier to maintain. And you could say, for example, your libraries are not up to date. Well, that's up to you. I was asking a lot library vendors, why aren't you going with Java 9 or 10? And they were saying, our customers don't ask for. So sorry guys, there is no excuse for asking your upstream, your library vendors, your suppliers. Just ask them, just make some pressure on them. Tell them you want to use the Java 15 APIs or new keywords, and tell them clearly that you want to have it and until when you want to have it. And when it's an open source project, sorry, there's no excuse, then go for it and hack the code, just I did with Plexus Utils, for example, and convert it from Java 8 to something new. And if they say it must run on Java 8, then there still is no excuse, because you can just do a multi-release jar. So sorry guys, there's no excuse for not going with modern Java, at least learning it and making some pressure and making some contributions to open source. If you wait too long with the switch from Java 8 to modern Java, guys, sorry, then you cut yourself from being modern. There will be a day when it's such a huge gap to step up to modern Java that maybe you will never do it. So don't wait too long. Go with modern Java, please. And one last word on Jakarta. I know many of you are using Java EE still, or are using Jakarta EE 8 or 9, and don't dare to go with modern Java due to that. This is still no excuse, because there are two things you need to know. Thing number one, your product that you run your application on, like for example WebSphere or Glassfish or whatever, some of them are able to run in more modern world. For example, let's use Jersey. Jersey officially is certified for Java 8, but it works rather well on JDK 15. I have it running here. So unless you must guarantee that your application works on any application server, you can go with modern Java, actually. Maybe you didn't know that or haven't thought of that, but it's possible. Ask your vendor. It does work. And the second thing, even if you have to stick with the Jakarta EE compliance strictly, there soon will be a Jakarta 9.1 release. And what is that? Jakarta 9.1 is nothing else than Jakarta EE 9.0, but running on JDK 11. So soon you can write an application that uses modern Java, not everything, but level 11 at least, and it is guaranteed to work on all application servers that are compliant with Jakarta EE 9.1. And this will be here in a few weeks from now. So really, there is no excuse. Start migration, use modern Java. And I hope that in a half a year or in a year, when I'm looking into more open source projects, I don't have to step up from Java 6 or 7 or 8, but at least some of those will already use Java 9, 10 or 11. So having said that, have lots of fun writing Java code. Java is a great language. And in these times, I have always to say, stay safe, wear a mask, and always party on.